Okay, so my name's Robert Pierce. I work for Shell Energy North America. I'm located in Spokane, Washington. I've been an energy marketer for quite some time. It's been a great industry to be in. The CCAs have been a new market for us. Today I'd like to share with you a little bit about the products that we are delivering currently to the CCAs, and as well as what I consider to be advanced programs that we are delivering and developing. And certainly happy to answer questions at the end. So this is what allows me to be here today. We won't go into that. You can read that at your leisure. So just real briefly about Shell Energy. We are an experienced provider of supplies, products and services to the CCAs, starting with Marin Clean Energy in 2010. They were the first CCA, and we're the first CCA provider. We're providing a range of services to them as well as other CCAs that are operating. We are managing about 5,000 megawatts of generation resources in the West. And of that 5,000, 2/3 roughly are hydro, solar, and wind, with the remaining being natural gas-fired generation. We manage that resource mix and the delivery to our customers, what I consider to be locally from our office in San Diego and in Spokane. So we're dispatching resources, delivering to customers, all from those offices. We are also an ESP in the state of California, which means we serve direct access load, a significant amount of direct access load. And as a result, we are active in the regulatory proceedings at the CPUC, oftentimes on the same side of the arguments as the CCAs, as their, we're supporting customer choice and cost containment. So we're an advocate there alongside the CCAs for customer choice. We're a member of Clean Energy and a supporter of lunch today, I understood. I didn't realize that. So we supply currently what I'm calling foundation products to the CCAs, and that includes energy, resource adequacy capacity. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically capacity to protect reserve margins and make sure that the lights stay on. Renewable energy supplies, and then also schedule coordination services. So these are the services that we supply primarily on a wholesale basis, and they're important to the CCA as they ramp up because they keep the lights on. They provide compliance for RPS requirements in the state, resource adequacy requirements in the state, and we also are the interface to the California ISO, which is a no small feat. They have 132 charge codes. I'm not familiar with very many of them, but that's something that we gather up for our customers in these buildings, and that's a service that we provide. In terms of advanced products, we recognize that two things, I guess. CCAs ultimately want local control of their own resources and build out those resources. So these foundation products that I described, these are somewhat transitory, I guess. For us, we recognize that we may be there in a bridge position for the CCA, and as they phase in customers, they build resources, our services and products to that CCA may go away, but that's okay. We've developed a business relationship. We may be able to do other things, as we'll talk about later. We also recognize that the CCA's motivation here is driven considerably by their climate action plans, and mitigation of greenhouse gases is a primary driver. We are delivering a significant amount of carbon neutral energy into the California grid. I think in 2017 over 1 million megawatt hours. And for us that means primarily hydroelectric energy that's produced from resources within our portfolio. So we're able to help in that regard. Over the last couple of years we have recognized that we're really good at this stuff, the wholesale stuff. But there's things happening on the other side of the meter. I mean, this stuff, I think I want one of those streetlight things for my house. So, and I said, didn't we get the free one today?
Yeah, it's part of the gift bag.
Okay, part of the gift bag. So, there's things happening, and one of the things is battery storage. So this is where we have formed a collaborative, which I'll talk about a little bit more. So we recognize, like I said, that we're good at these other things. We're not so good on the other side of the meter, but there's things happening. So we formed a relationship with Advanced Microgrid Solutions. They're located in San Francisco. They are on the forefront of battery storage installations. We're in the process of identifying strategic customers. Maybe they're CCA customers, utility customers of mine, or direct access customers where these would be a good host and we can provide value all around. I'll mention that John Crossan from AMS is in the audience today, and he's the expert on their program. I'm not a battery storage expert, and so he can answer questions about that. This is a picture that they've let us use. This is the battery storage installation. Is it 10 megawatts, John? This is in Irvine? In Irvine. So this is one of their projects. We're not involved in that, but you can see a sense that it is really happening. Some of the technologies don't always stick, but this one's going in the ground. And then about the CCAs. So, why battery storage? Well, for one thing, it's state law. As an ESP or as a CCA, state law requires that by 2020 you have to have storage equal to 1% of your peak load in 2020, online by 2024. So that's a ways out, right? And why do I want to pay early? No, don't go out and buy 20 megawatts. But certainly think about a pilot, talk to AMS, other providers, see how it works. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're gaining education here. There are operational benefits, there are financial benefits associated with the program. As an engineer, I'm more interested in the operational benefits. I started my career in transmission planning, and I want to know how these things all fit together. And then lastly, Shell participation, whether we participate in the project as maybe a financial participant or bring other services, energy delivery. So we're looking for those customers, those opportunities where we can fit all these pieces together. And we're learning on a small scale, but I would say that about AMS program, one thing I've learned is that we're talking in terms of megawatts, maybe not kilowatts. I'm not too interested in a tenth of a kilowatt. We're not going to bid a tenth of a kilowatt into the grid, to be honest. But we might, if we have several sites and we have 10 megawatts, then we've got some mass that we can bid into the grid, see if there's other revenue streams, and we can capture that. So that's our advanced program. I'm happy to answer any questions. And then pass on to my colleague Angie Boades, who came all the way from London just to be here, and talk about the advanced program she's doing in electric mobility.
Great.
Thank you, Robert.
Lovely, thank you. So thanks, Don, firstly for your introduction, and I'd also like to thank Commissioner Peterman and Ms. Galateva this morning, who brilliantly kind of queued up my presentation for this afternoon. I was just slightly disappointed that I was on this afternoon rather than straight after them this morning. But as has been pointed out, then I'm here from London, so I think I probably do win the prize for coming the furthest. But I'm willing to be beaten if someone could therefore tell me that they've come from further. So Angie Boades from Shell's Alternative Energies group, and that group looks at different forms of transportation. So it's not just electric mobility, it's also hydrogen vehicles, and equally things like advanced biofuels. So how can we use those as part of the kind of whole challenge to decarbonise transport? So, but I'm going to tell you about some electric vehicle trials that we've been running. But I'm going to start with that. But I know that you've memorised this by heart from Robert's presentation already, so we will skip over it quite quickly. So, problems and solutions. Which kind of comes first, actually? So, is it that the solution is really the electric vehicle? Is the problem really greenhouse gas emissions and therefore smog, tailpipe emissions? How does this all kind of fit together? Or in fact, does the solution really just cause another problem that we've got to try to solve? Yeah, we've been trying to do some work really around this, and hopefully some of the stuff that I'm going to tell you about, some of the really cool, innovative stuff that we've been doing might surprise you, I guess, from a company like Shell. But this whole problem and solution kind of thing. So, as I say, is the solution really just shifting to electric vehicles, or does it cause another problem for us to solve? So, let's think about the scenario of everybody switching to electric vehicles. Yeah, everybody therefore travels home after, you know, their day at work, and everybody therefore plugs in at 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. On one electric vehicle is pretty much the same, I think, as was mentioned earlier, as putting another house actually on the grid. And you and I both know that the grid wasn't really set up for that type of incremental load at a very, you know, short amount of time. So it actually, you know, the solution, yes, is electric vehicles, but equally it causes another problem that we've really got to try to solve. So how do you therefore incorporate the charging of those electric vehicles into the grid, you know, to really equally address the issues of reliability within the grid and charging at the right times for thinking about actually greening the grid. So I talked a bit about, you know, everybody charging at the same time. Yeah. So, you know, I think the ISO has done some work about this kind of concept of neighbourhoods, very local neighbourhoods, that where, you know, one person has got an electric vehicle and that quickly kind of goes between neighbours. In the UK, we call that keeping up with the Joneses. I don't know if that translates. If it does, yeah, then you can just imagine that whole kind of impact. Think about those vehicles just being Leafs, let alone Teslas. If you add a Tesla to that type of grid, yeah, forget it, basically. Multiple Teslas in an area. You need, you know, quite a lot of upgrades to, you know, your own residential power, let alone the neighbourhood kind of grid infrastructure. So there are challenges, and we've been trying to deal with some of those challenges and really look at how we can provide solutions to them, as well as you know, kind of creating some opportunities for other parties, whether that be householders, workplaces, or indeed CCAs. You know this diagram. This was all new to me 2-3 years ago. So we also know that, you know, when everybody, as I say, kind of goes home at that 5-6 o'clock, plugging in their vehicles at that time is almost the worst time possible. So again, it's just another part of this problem that actually somebody needs to come in and try to solve. So how have we tried to solve that? We've run some pilots. In fact, we've run 3 pilots, one in London, one in Hamburg, and one here in California. And those pilots have really been looking at how to smart charge, how to manage charge vehicles, and how to try to integrate them into the grid. So really how to charge them at the time when the grid wants them to be charged, and equally will kind of pay you for them to be charged at that time as well. We've built some software that basically means that, you know, somebody goes and they plug their vehicle in and we take control of that charging. As a Brit, I always kind of generally compare that to saying, you know, well, I want a cup of tea. You know, us Brits, we like tea. So, you know, you plug your kettle in and then actually I tell you when you could have a cup of tea. So I can just about deal with that as a Brit. But anyhow, so we've been doing something, you know, along those lines with electric vehicles. And we've been doing it with a couple of customers, as I say, in Southern California. We've been doing it with a workplace customer who actually has, I guess, probably thinks that they're being, you know, quite considerate to allow workplace charging to their employees. But they've also worked out that that actually means that they're being incredibly generous to their employees. Because equally they've worked out that, you know, it can cost them a lot of money unless managed effectively. And we've also been doing it with a fleet customer that has depot EV charging. So I think there was some commentary this morning around really kind of looking for small trucks, you know, to go electric. And we've been working with a particular fleet company there to look at how to integrate their charging. And they're a really useful example because they have probably, a dozen electric vehicle trucks. They all go out at the same time, very early in the morning on their rounds. They all come back very early afternoon, and they all plug in at the same time. And this company had no idea that actually when they looked at their bill and when they looked at demand charges, it wasn't their building load that was creating the problem, it was actually their electric vehicle. So they thought they were doing, great things, but they were all plugging in, all charging, same time. Yes, probably charging generally at the right time for the grid, very early afternoon, solar peak, etc. But because, there was nobody saying, okay, you can charge now, and then another person running out, into the yard 2 hours later saying you could charge now, etc. It was all happening at the same time and really creating this huge peak that they were being penalised for. So we said, okay, we'll work behind the scenes with you. You basically come back, you plug your electric vehicles in, and we will stop the charging, and we will then stagger the charging, basically, for when the grid actually wants you to charge and when is good for you, such that, in fact, you don't increase your peak load at all. So we've, in fact, traded EV batteries and that capacity into ancillary services markets here. We've had them charging and therefore also been ready to curtail if the ISO sends a signal in the spinning reserves market. We followed a peak, a frequency load, such that, in fact, the charging of those vehicles follows that load and, is good for the grid. We've done a fair amount of time of use, pretty simple kind of time of use charging. So pretty simple. You need to have the right, clearly, kind of, rate design behind it, and we did some kind of simulation work behind that. But actually, all of this has worked. The fleet customer has seen, a significant benefit in, therefore, all of his EVs coming back still on their same schedule, and actually us just taking control behind the scenes, and therefore reducing his demand charges. The workplace customer, great for them as well. So they've done the same. They've reduced their demand charges. They feel good about actually what they're trying to do as well for the grid. And equally, we at Shell have learned a whole bunch of stuff about how to do this. And it's pretty cool stuff, I have to say. It's stuff that means that, in fact, we can, start to decarbonise transport, and we can make it work such that it's integrated within the grid. We've been doing these pilots. We're happy to continue to do more pilots to therefore look at more markets, more power markets. Some of the ideas that were floated this morning, great for us to explore. And I think the CCAs are perfect testing ground to do that as well, equally with residential customers who perhaps, need to think twice about handing over control of when they're charging to somebody else. Fundamentally, the key thing out of all of this is that customer needs to have a vehicle that is usable at the end of it. And certainly I think, that's still something that, we're keen to try out with residential customers. So, and we certainly kind of see CCAs as being useful partners for that. Don,
all right.
Back
Thank
to
you
you,
very
I
much.
think.